Hi everyone, welcome to today's ARCHER2 webinar. So today we have Chris Johnson giving a talk about eCSE. There will be time after the talk for questions, so feel free to write any questions you have in the chat then or use the raise hand button. So yeah, without further ado, I'll hand it over to Chris.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. So yep, this afternoon's talk is on the embedded CSE, the eCSE, as part of the ARCHER2 service. Just firstly, a note about the slides themselves. We're very keen that people know about the eCSE, so we're perfectly happy for you to use material from this talk. The instructions and the license for doing that are here. Probably the best thing is if you do want to use any of these slides to promote the program, then just get in touch with us via the service desk and we can send you the most up-to-date version, or sort of tailor them to your own usage. So feel free to do that. So ARCHER2 itself involves several partners. So there's the funding itself for the service is provided by the research councils, UKRI, specifically EPSRC and NERC. EPCC at the University of Edinburgh run and the functions within ARCHER2 and also host the system. And then the hardware is provided by HPE. So you can see all the various logos there. So in a minute, I will talk about the eCSE itself, but one of the things I wanted to draw your attention to is actually another event that's happening in a couple of weeks. So on the 10th of May, we have a tutorial, a kind of workshop on the eCSE, where we'll spend a little bit longer going through the various parts of applying for a proposal, how you put a team together, giving a bit more information about projects that we've had, going through the details of the proposal documents. We're all well aware that putting in proposals or basically anything with the deadline, it can be a bit daunting to start with. You're not always sure quite what documents you need, or are you getting the costings right and things like that. We just want really to spend some time going through that and to hopefully show you that it's nothing to worry about, and we can help with it all. So we'll go through all of that in more detail. So the timetable for that is below. We might vary that a little bit depending on any questions that come in the meantime, but that'll be broadly speaking the topics that we'll cover. And it'll be fairly spaced out. There'll be a good half-an-hour break in the middle, so you can go off and do other things. So don't feel you're committed to be sitting there for 3 hours. And may finish a little early depending on the number of questions. But you will find that the link for that at the bottom of the slide there. You join it basically the same way as you join this tutorial using Collaborate. So I hope to see some people there. And I should also mention that there'll obviously be a little bit of overlap with the session from this afternoon, but not a huge amount, because we will go through different things in a bit more detail. So just because you've attended this, don't feel that that should put you off attending the other session. But anyway, back to today's session. So what I'm going to go through is, first of all, what is eCSE funding for? What is the program? What's it about? And then a bit more on who it's actually for. Why might you be interested? And then I'll talk a little bit more about the actual funding and what it provides, a bit more about the program status, where we are with eCSE within ARCHER2. And then I'll give some examples of eCSE works and projects. Well, first of all, some sort of generic statements about the kinds of work that it funds, and then some actual examples of projects that are finished. Then what I'll do is I will do a quick walkthrough of applying for a project. That will be a sort of whistle-stop tour really of the various sections of the form. I won't spend a huge amount of time on that. I've got a little video of it recorded that I'll talk over. Because I'll spend more time on that when we do the workshop in a couple of weeks. But I will go through that so you can at least see what it all looks like. And then at the end, I can summarize and answer any questions. So firstly, what is the eCSE funding for? Well, this really came about following on from the previous eCSE program under ARCHER, which ran for over 6 years. And that itself followed on from the DCSE program that had run under Hector. And it's really a recognition that, as well as providing funding for hardware to actually provide the supercomputers themselves and all the various networking and so on, and as well as providing electricity and system support and so on, you really do also need to fund software development. Software basically goes stale if it's not updated, if it's not improved, if it's not looked after. And so the whole idea here is that the eCSE is to fund software development for running codes on ARCHER2. So this is a call about software development. So it basically funds development to support the ARCHER2 community. It allows software to be developed in a sustainable manner with the idea of improving research that actually happens on the ARCHER2 service itself. It's to facilitate the efficient use of ARCHER2 resources through enhanced code performance and functionality. And the funding itself allows for the employment of an RSC or a PDRA to carry out software development of codes, which it leads to research within the EPSRC remit. So a couple of points to mention about that. Firstly, at the moment, the eCSE is for codes that are within the EPSRC remit and nothing else. That may change as the service goes on, but that's how it stands at the moment. And secondly, the important thing is that this is funding the salary of an RSC or a PDRA to carry out research. This is real money to provide funds for salaries, and I'll say a little bit about that on the next slide. This is for codes that will run on ARCHER2. At the moment, this is for codes that will run on the CPUs of ARCHER2. There may be other hardware that will come along at some point, but at the moment, its focus is on the CPU hardware rather than any sort of GPUs or other things. So it's specifically ARCHER2 and specifically the CPUs. But if that changes, then obviously that will be advertised at some point. So who is it for? Well, there's two ways that you can be directly involved. Obviously, there's lots of ways that you might benefit indirectly if your code you work on is improved. But the ways that you can get involved indirectly are basically the two here. So you might be a researcher who works with a code which runs or may potentially run on ARCHER2, and perhaps it requires some improvement. I'll talk a bit in a minute about what kinds of improvement I might be talking about here, but for now it requires some improvement. But maybe you don't actually have the skills yourself to do it, or maybe you do have the skills but you don't have the time to do it, to actually do the technical work yourself. But maybe you have somebody in your own research group who does, or maybe you don't. But you have a need for a code to be improved that is or will run on ARCHER. So if you're that, then the most likely role you'd have in an eCSE is probably either as a co-I or a PI on an eCSE project. And then there may be somebody else either within your group or from elsewhere who would do the actual technical work. So that's one way to be involved. The other way is that maybe you are an RSC, a research software engineer, or a PDRA, postdoc, who has or is gaining software development experience within HPC. Maybe you work on a particular code, or maybe you're a PhD student who's coming to the end of your studies. In that case, you're more likely to be the person doing the technical work on an eCSE project. There's several, there's at least the two different ways that you can be involved in a project. There may be some overlap with those two or variations. So there are, on some occasions, we may have the person doing the technical work on a project who has enough management skills that they may be able to be the PI as well. That's fine. And sometimes the technical staff are also co-Is on a project. We've got a few examples of where that's happened. That's fine. So there's different ways that these things can be mixed, but they're principally the ways that you're likely to be involved. I want to note here about PhD students. So if you're a PhD student and you're coming to the end, this might be something that you would do immediately after that. If you're partway through your PhD studies, then we need to discuss a little bit more about how that would work, whether you would pause your PhD to do this, or whether you'd be doing something part-time. There's various different options. But just to note that you wouldn't be able to do an eCSE if you were full-time as a PhD, or the other way around. But that's something that we could discuss. But if you fall into any of the categories I've just mentioned, then the eCSE may well be relevant for you. So what is the funding? Well, EPCC guarantees that an average of at least 12 FTEs per year will be provided for the eCSE program. So the costings here are based on the 80% FEC model, or an equivalent if you don't use FEC. Depending on whether you put in proposals before, that may or may not mean much to you, but we can help with that. We can help you, sort costings out. But that's the model we use. Now, the funding for eCSE projects can be requested for staff located at various different places. So it may well be that the staff are at the institution of the PI, maybe somebody within your research group, or within an RSC group, or computer technician group within your university. It may be that the staff come from here at EPCC, from within the ARCHER2 centralized CSE support team. It may be that the person doing the technical work would come from neither of those places, and maybe at a third party. And I'll show you some examples of where that happens in a minute. Or it could be some combination of the above. So because you can have more than one member of staff working on this, it can be spread over several. So a typical eCSE project probably would usually have one person working on it, but there are quite a number that will have two, and very occasionally it may even be three. So there's the possibility of spreading the funding over different staffing. The important thing is that in total, the total number of person months that are funded should not come to more than 12. So it can be between 1 and 12 person months across all the technical staff. So as well as being flexible in terms of being able to spread over more different staff, it's also flexible in terms of the time period. So you can spread the effort over a longer number of months than the number of person months awarded. So for example, if you're working, you might be awarded 9 person months, but you could spread that over 12 calendar months, or you might be awarded 12 person months, and you could spread that over, say, 18 calendar months. And that's very useful if you've got other commitments that you need to keep, or if you're working part-time, for example. Some people only work 50%, so then they could only do this at 50% of their time, which is fine. But as with most things that I'm going to mention, if you have any questions about that, or you're wanting to see whether your own arrangement would fit, just get in touch and we can discuss it and check that. So it's worth noting that projects that are successful, that are funded, what we do is we set you up an ARCHER2 project on the system itself, and we provide 800 CUs. So a CU here is a node hour, so 128 core hours, and we provide 800 CUs of ARCHER2 resource per 6 person months of eCSE effort awarded. So if you've got a 12 PM project, for example, you'd have 1,600 CUs. And that's just to enable you to do any testing or development on ARCHER2 itself. And we have found that tends to be enough for most projects. If it looks like you need more, then that's something that you should consider before applying, because you'd have to get that from somewhere else. But again, we can discuss the options for that. It would maybe that via access to HPC, or via your consortium, or there might be various other options. So the program itself operates on a number of important core values. So openness, independence, transparency, and it's a not-for-profit service that provides value for money to the HPC community and beyond. So the funding itself is allocated using an open, fair, and peer-reviewed funding program. And the proposals are selected by an independent, diverse panel of experts. So it's worth noting here that the panel that assess the proposals are independent of us here at EPCC. We, for example, will sometimes bid into this and sometimes get effort out of it. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes we're not. So for that reason, we make sure that the panel is independent. Although we organise the panel meetings, nobody from EPCC, in fact, nobody from the University of Edinburgh is on the panel itself. That maintains the independence. It's other people who make the decisions on what is funded. And we have made effort to ensure that the panel is diverse. So we have a diversity of expertise and to cover all the different subjects that come up in the eCSE. But it's also diverse in terms of backgrounds, in terms of sort of ages. Also, we've got a good gender balance there as well. And we publish our assessment criteria so that you can see how the proposals will be assessed. And that assessment criteria is given in the guidance document that you'll find online. So we run a regular series of calls. There's 3 per year, and that's very useful because that means that if you apply, you don't have to wait too long for the next call to come along. And if you're successful, that's great. You can start within a couple of months after the proposal is submitted. If you're not successful, we'll give you feedback on how to improve your proposal, and chances are there'll be a call open immediately after that, so you could then apply again if you wanted. So I mentioned that it's a not-for-profit program. So basically, we commit to providing 12 FTEs of effort throughout the program. Now we have a fixed pot of money for that. If it turns out it costs more than that, then EPCC will pay for that as part of the service. So you guarantee giving out the 12 FTEs each year. If, on the other hand, it turns out that people have cost less and we have money left over, then we put that back into funding additional eCSE staff months. So basically, we don't make any profit out of this. All the money, any money left over goes back into more person months. And under ARCHER, we did provide about another 30 person months of effort out of that. And we're hoping to be able to do the same for ARCHER2 or similar. So the program itself, we're very keen to support and encourage people at the early stages of their career. So many RSCs, PDRAs are at the early stages of their career. So the program sort of naturally supports those, but we are keen to do that, to support you there. So don't, if you feel that you don't have enough experience, well, do get in touch and we can discuss it, because it may be that actually with the right team in place and the right training available, it might turn out that actually you are perfectly eligible. And it's a very good opportunity to develop software development skills, and it is good for your CV. I mean, often I see as part of my job quite a lot of CVs of people who've worked on various different codes, and often your CV will say you've worked on such a code, or you've done this development. Well, if that includes an eCSE, then that shows that you've actually spent some dedicated time developing a particular code for a particular fixed period. So that really does look good on your CV. So I think it's a worthwhile thing to be doing. So also the projects are relatively short, so it means that you can try different things as well without committing to a very long period. Another thing that we run is we run observer calls. So we invite early career researchers to attend panel meetings to actually see how these proposals are assessed and accepted. We open up a call for those. We had one recently where we accepted quite a number of observers, and we had 4 of those attend a recent panel meeting. And this is a good opportunity for people to see what reviewers are looking for. We will hopefully run another call reasonably soon, so please keep an eye out for that. They tend to be quite popular. And it's a good way of seeing what happens in a panel meeting. So in terms of the status, so we've already run 6 calls under ARCHER2. We've so far awarded 414 person months across 45 projects. We've had PIs from 24 different institutions, RSEs from 17 different institutions, all based in the UK. Some projects already completed, and I'll show you some examples of those in a minute. And you can see a map on the left there of the different places involved in these projects. I've sort of completed the ones like so the London one, for example, covers 2 or 3 different institutions. Edinburgh covers both EPCC and the rest of the University of Edinburgh, and so on. But the map should at least show you that, that this is actually spread out quite a lot around the country. So the 7th eCSE call is presently open. So it closes for technical evaluation of codes on the 24th of May. And then the final deadline for documents is on the 14th of June. I'll go through that's 2-stage process in a few minutes. But if you go on to the ARCHER2 website, you will see a timetable of all calls. And there's that includes all the calls we've had so far, and the present one and the next one, and we will add some more. But you can see that it's a regular timetable across the year, so you can work out when the next one's going to be from that. So the kinds of work that you can do in an eCSE, there's various different things. You could be looking to implement algorithmic improvements within an existing code in a way that's portable. You could be looking to improve the scalability of software on higher core counts, again, in a portable way. You might be looking not so much at performance, but more at the sustainability of a code, or the maintainability, or the usability. And some of the examples that I'll show you in a minute, actually, in fact, most of the examples focus on that rather than performance, but all of those things are fine. You might be putting in improvements to a code to allow new science to be carried out on ARCHER2 itself, or you might be porting a code from somewhere else, or optimizing a code so that it runs efficiently specifically on ARCHER2, taking advantage of particular ARCHER2 hardware and interconnect and so on. Or you may be just looking to put in new functionalities to an existing code. Or you may have a code that presently runs on a tier 2 system, or your local university cluster, or some equivalent, and you want to bring it to ARCHER2, and there's various things you need to do, perhaps to improve the performance, or to port it to ARCHER2. All of those things are eligible. The only thing I would say here is that the funding cannot be used for scientific research itself. So if you're actually trying to get science out of this, then you would be looking for a different program. I mean, the ultimate goal is the science research, but not the eCSE work itself is to work on the codes that then enable that scientific research. Obviously, there are some some grey areas that we'd probably need to discuss, but just get in touch if you're not sure about that. Okay, so now I'll just run you through a few examples of some eCSE projects that we've had that have completed. These are all projects that have been through the whole cycle. So they applied in all of these cases. It was to the 1st or 2nd call a couple of years ago. So they've applied for the call, they've had their project accepted, their project has run, their project has finished, and they've produced a final report. So they've gone through the whole process. So I think I've got 4 examples here, and I'll go through the sort of particular points of each one as we go along. So the first one I want to show you here is the Paragems project. So this was a project where the entire team here came from Manchester. That's not always the case. You'll see some in a minute where they're spread out. But here we had a PI, Lee Margetts from University of Manchester. Then we had a COI, Andrei Livkov, also at Manchester. And then the technical work was carried out by Piotr Boom, also from Manchester. And this project was awarded 9 person months, but as you can see, this was spread over 1 calendar year. So this person was working at 75%, which was fine. And the code being worked on was ParaFEM. So ParaFEM code is a finite element library or code that's used by quite a number of people. And the idea here was, for the project, was to integrate the newly developed maths library for discrete exterior calculus, the DEC library. So that's one of the things that often happens in an eCSE project. You may have a code which is used fairly heavily, and then you might have a library that works with other codes, and you want to bring everything together. So here you're bringing a library into a code so that it enables it to do more things. Perfectly legitimate use of eCSE efforts. So as part of the code, 5 mini-apps were developed and optimized. They worked on the model elasticity and diffusion of synthetic microstructures. This now allows the finite element and discrete exterior calculus to be applied within the same framework. So it creates the possibility for coupled simulations. In terms of performance, so when the project was finished, it was benchmarked, and it was seen to be 80% efficient on 8,000 cores for a problem with 135 million unknowns. So that's a good performance. And the trends indicate that this efficiency could be extended to higher core counts with larger meshes. So that's all good for future proofing. We had another project here. This one was also in the field of broadly engineering. So you're looking here at turbulent flow. So this was an all Imperial College team. So we've got Sylvia and Lacet there at Imperial College. And then we had a co-I, and the co-I here is also the technical staff. It's perfectly okay for a member of technical staff to be a co-I on the project if they want. It's not compulsory. So here Arash Hamzaru was doing technical work and also co-I. And this was 12 person months over a calendar year. So this person was working at 100%. So this was working on the XCompact 3D code. So XCompact 3D is a high order finite different suite of flow solvers working on a Cartesian mesh. And as part of the project, new functionalities have been added to the code. So we now have a CAD interface to insert complex objects into the computational domain. Now have the possibility to simulate moving objects immersed in a turbulent flow. And we now have fluid structure interaction, FSI, a module to simulate problems where one or more complex solid structure interacts and modifies the behavior of the surrounding fluid. We also have an improved free surface solver to simulate two fluids within different densities. So for example, air and water. So these functions are now all available in the master branch. So if you go into GitHub and look at the GitHub repository for XCompact 3D, you'll see all these functionalities in there now. And there's a paper under review at the moment which describes all that, so keep an eye out for that. Then we have a third project here, and it just so happens these are all sort of broadly within the remit of engineering, or at least these first three are. That's just a coincidence of the ones that happen to finish first. We've got lots of other subject areas as well. I'll show you a chemistry one next, but this third one is also from sort of broadly engineering. So this one has a slightly more diverse team. So we've got a PI at Imperial College and technical staff at Imperial College, but we had a co-I here at University of Durham, and then a couple of other people who I don't think they were co-Is initially on the project, but they joined, so they were named on the final report. So this is working on FireDrake. So that's a high-level, high productivity system for the specification and solution of partial differential equations, again using the finite element method. So the computation is fully and transparently parallel once the mesh is loaded, but FireDrake had previously lacked a scalable and flexible I/O checkpointing feature for the meshes and functions. So the project here has put in new checkpointing capabilities in FireDrake using the well-known HDF5 library. This now allows for saving meshes and functions at large scale and then loading them on the number of processes appropriate for the phase of the simulation. So that's really important, being able to stop a code and then restart it on a different number of cores. That's very useful. And now mesh extrusion and time stepping problems are also treated transparently. So this basically improves users who want to pause and resume large scale time dependent simulations and people that want to post-process on their workstation. So finally, we have a project from this time chemistry and materials. So this one's working on CASTEP. So we have a team here. This time the PI is at Warwick. We have co-Is from Durham and York. But this time this technical staff was from elsewhere. So this was technical staff from a third-party institution here, STFC. So they've made use of the technical expertise from elsewhere, which is fine. and this person was working at 50%, so did 3-person months over six calendar months. So CASTEP is a density functional theory code. It's a UK flagship code, specialized for solid materials. It was heavily used on ARCHER and now heavily used on ARCHER2. We've got about 300 to 400 active users. It uses a significant fraction of the time. So the computing transition states, reaction rates, exploring free energy barriers, enhanced sampling are important in a wide range of applications, but were previously poorly supported. So the project addressed this by implementing 2 new features. So there's now support for extremely widely used nudged elastic band transition state search tool, which is augmented by a state-of-the-art robust optimizer. There's now an interface to the IPI Universal Force Engine, which allows CASTEP to be connected efficiently to a wide range of external codes with enhanced sampling capabilities. So the key beneficiaries here are a couple of the collaborative computational projects, so CCP NC and CCP9, and also the UK CAR Parallelo consortium. So we now have new tools which aid in reconciling experimental objects with atomic scale behavior. So that should help guide future experiments. Okay, so that was a very small selection of the projects we've had. So that was just 4 projects. As I mentioned, we've awarded 45 projects so far. So clearly there's a lot more and a bigger range of things going on with the eCSE. But that was hopefully just to get you a sort of hint of what happens. So I'll now just say a little bit about applying for an eCSE, and then I'll finish up by just showing you a little video of that. First of all, the thing to do is to take a look at the ARCHER2 website if you're interested in applying. If you go to the eCSE calls page, you should see something that looks a bit like that. And do have a good read through that. One thing I would advise you to look at in advance is that if you look in the sort of second section there, you'll see a link to the terms document. It is worth having a good look through that and passing that on to your sort of research department just to check that they're happy with that, because you will have to accept these terms if your proposal is accepted. And these terms are fixed. We don't negotiate them project by project. So please do take a look at that and make sure you've checked that through with your department. Other than that, it's fairly straightforward. So the application is a 2-stage application process. So the first stage is the technical evaluation stage, where you should download the template, fill that in, and provide it to us by the first deadline, in this case the 24th of May. We will then complete the evaluation and send it back to you to include in your final submission. The final deadline for proposals, for full proposals with everything in, including the completed technical evaluation, is the 14th of June. And that pattern is followed for most calls, where we have the technical evaluation deadline and then 3 weeks later, the full deadline. So once you start a proposal in the SAFE, you should invite any other project team members. So one person starts the proposal. That doesn't have to be the PI, that can be anyone. And you should invite anyone else who you want to join. Otherwise, they won't be considered as part of the team. So you invite them. There's a functionality for doing that within the SAFE. Allowable roles are PI, COI, technical staff, contact or member. Most of those are probably obvious. The contact really means that you don't have any particular role in the project, but you're acting as a contact. Sometimes that's useful if you've got, say, somebody who's head of a research group and maybe they've got a PA or something like that. They can join, but there may be various other uses. Member is just the sort of generic one. You don't have any particular role, but I mean you'll see that when you start a proposal. Technical staff should add their own CVs then, and we want a CV from all the technical staff. But all other team members should provide a track record and describe what they'll bring to the project. That's quite important, because if you know, it's often tempting, I think, sometimes to invite lots of co-Is to join a project. but which is fine, but we want everybody in the project to have a particular role. So we do want people to describe what background they bring to the project, and what will they bring, what will they be doing in this project. And we want all people, PI, co-Is and so on, to describe that. So when you do invite people from the proposal within the SAFE, please use the email address that they use in the SAFE. The SAFE then deals with it all and invites them. If they're not already in the SAFE, find out what email address they would want to use and put that in, and it will invite them, and it takes care of all of that. Note that you do need to have technical staff on your proposal before you can submit, otherwise it won't let you submit. There is an option for unnamed staff, but you should name people where you can. There's two main templates which are used. One is for the technical evaluation, which contains sections you need to fill in to describe the code, give a brief overview of the complexity of code modifications you'll use, a section on the scaling evidence, and that's the thing that you'll want to look at quite early on to make sure that you've got all the scaling evidence you need for your code. There's a section asking about sustainability, maintenance, and validation of codes. And then there's also a section asking about the availability of codes on the completion of a project. What's the licensing model and so on. And then there's a proposal template for your final submission, which contains three main sections on the objectives and associated success metrics. Then a section on the overview, technical information and work plan, and finally a section on impacts and benefits. So to begin a proposal, go to that call page there. Start the proposal in the SAFE. You'll need to enter a project title, subject area, and a remit, which in this case will have to be EPSRC, and then submit your technical evaluation by that first deadline. And we will then return that to you in good time for final submission. So once you've submitted your technical evaluation, you can be getting on with the rest of your proposal. So you should check through the terms document that I mentioned with your department to check they're happy with that. You can invite the other team members, and once you've invited them, you can promote them to whatever role, PI, co-I, whatever that you want. You should get costing information, which I'll say a bit more about in just a second. Complete the main proposal form from the template, and then complete the rest of the online form, which I'll show you in a minute, and add any letters of support. These are optional, but often useful. But we do encourage you to make sure that the letters of support are meaningful, that they're people that might actually want to use the benefits of that you're going to put in, not just people who are generally supportive of the project. Everything should be added as a PDF, including the technical evaluation, and then you should submit by the final deadline. And we cannot accept late proposals, so please do get that to us on time. And start early and keep saving your proposal as you go along. So just before I show you the form itself, the last but one thing I want to show you is just say something about costings really. So you should provide 100% FEC for each member of technical staff. The form then works out 80% of that, which is what would be paid. We can answer questions about that, and if you want to show us the costings in advance, then you send them into the help desk and the service desk, and we can check through them to make sure that they look correct. The funding should only include the technical staff, but there's no funding for PI or co-I costs, and it should include direct and indirect costs, but not additional costs. Your university will be able to get you that, and they will know what all of that means, but we can help. Travel is given separately, so that can include project members traveling to meet each other. There is guidance on what we provide there, and later on we'll provide a separate fund for traveling to promote the work you've done. If you don't use FEC in your institution, please do get in touch so that we can discuss how that will work. And you will need a document supporting your costing. Usually that comes via something like WorkTribe, or previously something called a PFACT form. Your department will know all about that. so they can help, but we can also help, of course. We pay the PI's institution via invoice. So if you're using a third party, the PI will then need to pass the money on to the third party. We pay the PI's institution. If you are using ARCHER2 CSE staff, so that's EPCC staff, you do not need to provide costings for that because we have those costings. We recommend that you use named staff where possible. The ability of the technical staff to complete the work is assessed, so it's important that that's there. You can use unnamed staff if you want, but again, it's probably best to discuss that with us before. So the final thing I wanted to do was just run this little video to show you the application form. So just a second, just going here. So I'll share this. So you'll just bear with me a second. So hopefully now you can see a little video which I'm about to show. So this is a video I recorded of myself submitting a proposal. So I recorded this a little while ago, but it's quite useful, so I've kept it. So it's a little bit out of date because it shows you the old version of the SAFE, for example. And there's also one section missing in the form here. You now have to provide a little summary of your proposal at the top, just a short paragraph. But other than that, what you see here should be pretty much what you see if you try to submit. So I'll just run it and I'll talk over the top, and I will try and keep up with myself as I do it. So first thing you'll do is log on to the SAFE, and then you see something like that. Then if you go to funding calls at the top, and then start a new funding application, and then you can click on create. And what you'll need to do here is put in a title. As you can see, this is all just a test version here, so things will look slightly funny. And then as you go down, next thing you might want to do is, I'm going to make myself a PI here. You could add another PI and invite somebody to join, but I'm just going to make myself PI. It's easier for this demo. Then I'm going to add technical staff. I'm going to say, so this was from a little while ago, so this is, just going to put a date in there for when that person will start. Then going to put in the effort level, so I'm going to say, well, I'm going to do 6 months on this. And then I'm going to put in a costing, so that would be the 100% FEC. I'm just making up a number there. You should also put in information about existing funding, and then I'm just going to make myself the technical staff, which just to make it easier for the demo. So I'm going to add my own CV to that. So there's dummy CV being added. And then the next thing I'm going to do is add the documents. I'm going to add the proposal document, which I've completed as a PDF. So there's a dummy one just going in. And then I am going to add the technical evaluation. So this is the completed document that was returned from the from the EPCC help desk, well, ARCHER2 service desk, sorry. And then the next thing I'm going to do is go through and just edit the other bits of the document. So I'm going to put the start date, which is going to match that of the technical staff. I'm going to say, well, so this was so I'm going to do 6 months over 6 months. I'm going to say this is working on VASP, just to pick a code that's popular. And then I'm going to look, well, that's got a lot of users. Okay, so this is asking here about the number of users of the code. There's various questions there, and I'm going to explain where I got that. So I got that, this was back on the Archer website. So I'm going to say, well, this is focusing on code improvements, although there are other things. It could be usability and maintainability or so on. I'm going to say, well, the improvements I'm going to make are going to affect 5% of users. And this is just an estimate right at this stage. So I'm just, for ease of demo, I'm going to say that there's no travel here, but you could put in a travel plan there. And because I've put nothing, I'm just going to put 0 there. I don't need any particular compilers or tools. I mean, you don't have to put basic things like, you know, C compiler or Fortran compiler. It's only if it's anything special. And I'm going to say, well, I've already got a VASP license, so I don't need anything else there at this stage. So you could add, of course. And then the next things should be fairly straightforward. So obviously, it's some chemistry and materials because it's VASP. It's in the EPSRC. I'm going to say, well, I'm part of the part of this consortium, the E05. So that's, I think, pretty much everything. See, so if you go to the bottom now, you've now got the option to submit. So I will submit. Am I sure I want to submit? Yes, I am. And then your proposal, you can see it. You won't see quite as much as I'm seeing here because I am part of the eCSE team, but you can actually go in and view your completed proposal. You can see it's there. So that's that. So I'll go back to the main slides. So that was basically it. So that should hopefully show you a little bit about what the eCSE is about, a little bit about how you apply. So as I mentioned, the 7th call is open at the moment. Please do see the timetable for future calls. And we have 3 calls per year. So for this particular call, technical evaluations are due in just under a month's time on the 24th of May. And then a final deadline for all the documents is the 14th of June. Details of the call can be found on the ARCHER2 website. And then I just want to remind you about the tutorial we have in just under 2 weeks' time, where we'll spend some time going through some of the things we've been through today, but I will expand a bit more on what you need for a proposal, give a bit more information about costings and various documents and so on. I also draw your attention to a recent blog we put together, which covers some of the same material I've just talked about, but in a slightly different way. And sometimes it's easier to read things than to listen. So do take a look at that if you get the chance. And then if you have any questions, obviously you can ask now. But in general, please just contact the ARCHER2 service desk, and we will be happy to help as much as we can. So that was my talk. So please just let me know if you have any questions.
Thanks very much, Chris. So yeah, if anyone has any questions they'd like to either put in the chat, or if you want to click the raise hand button at the bottom of the screen. Okay, so it seems like there aren't any questions. So I guess thank you, Chris, for giving that talk.
No, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.